Today I'm talking about everything wrong with the 5.3 liter V8 from Chevrolet as a heavy duty licensed diesel mechanic. So stay tuned. Well, there she is in all her glory, the old Chevy 1500. I honestly, if I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't know if I like the front end on these things. They're nice looking trucks, just maybe not for me. But you guys know the drill. We got the Tim Hortons coffee. This thing is gonna thaw out a little bit. For whatever reason, every time I bring a truck in the shop, it just seems to be snowing. And maybe that's just a Fredericton thing because it doesn't really stop snowing here ever in the winter, which I kind of like. But yeah, no, not a bad truck. This configuration truck I actually kind of like. I like the smaller four-door cabs because you get the longer box. It's just more utilitarian, I think. But yeah, no, not a bad looking truck, just the LT. So I mean, pretty run-of-the-mill, nothing too fancy. But yeah, not a bad looking truck. I do think the GMCs look much better, but again, that's just my opinion, guys. What is going on today, guys? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have this, well, this beautiful Chevy 1500 behind us. Originally, I was hoping to get a Ram 2500 Cummins, do some cool stuff, maybe compare it to the Power Wagon, but just couldn't pull that off this weekend. So in second place, we have, like I said, this nice looking Chevy here. And I figured I would talk about some of the issues with the notorious 5.3 liter V8 in these Chevy trucks. Oh yeah. Oh, one of these days, there she is. So this 5.3 liter V8 debuted in 1999. I believe Chevy officially calls it the third gen small block. It replaced the 350 small block, which in my opinion is one of the best engines ever made. And I used to actually own one. I had a 96 Chev and it had almost 500,000 kilometers with the original motor. So they were really, really reliable, bulletproof engines, meaning that this 5.3 has a lot to live up to. So the first generation of 5.3 ran from 1999 to 2007. In 2007, GM introduced some updates to the 5.3 platform, including the active fuel management, basically, which is a cylinder deactivation. This introduced quite a number of problems for the engines in the later years, which we'll get into. So that's pretty noteworthy. And then finally, in 2013, GM released, I guess, the third generation of the 5.3. And so currently, that is still the engine that they put in their new trucks. It comes with 355 horsepower. It's no slouch. The thing's got some decent power, but she's a good torquey V8 in there, and you know, she's not gonna let you down in terms of power. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we are just going to be talking about the issues with this engine, and we're gonna start off with the biggest one in my opinion, and that is the lifter failures. Now, this lifter issue is actually still currently a problem on the brand new 5.3s. So that just kind of adds to why I think it's the most important issue for anyone to know who's looking to buy a Chev truck with the 5.3. So right off the bat, a lifter, it rides on your camshaft, and as a cam lobe comes around, it pushes up the lifter, and then that lifter activates the valve train and then activates the valve or pushes the valve down. That's what a lifter does, and that is what is causing a lot of issues with these 5.3s. Now, this lifter issue seems to stem from GM's active fuel management or their cylinder deactivation technology. And just quickly looking at it, it seems like it's very similar to what Ram uses for their cylinder deactivation. And if you guys know anything about the 5.7 HEMI tick, that is a lifter failure. And I've done a couple videos on the channel about it. I've kind of dove pretty deep into that topic. So I know quite a bit about Ram's lifter failures. And to me, looking at GM's mechanism, it seems very, very similar. And to me, it's no surprise that GM is experiencing lifter failures just like Ram is in their 5.7 HEMIs. So the lifters on the 5.3 are hydraulic lifters, and what happens is engine oil is used as the hydraulic medium. So pressurized engine oil actually forces the lifter onto the lobe, and it puts it into spec. And the main advantage is that your valve timing is more precise. Now with a big diesel engine like this is a full mechanical valve train. It's a lot stronger, but over time, the valve train does get out of adjustment, and we need to go in and actually manually readjust the valve train, which you don't have to do on a hydraulically actuated valve train. Now the active fuel management, or the cylinder deactivation system, uses that hydraulic lifter to its advantage. In fact, they're special hydraulic lifters. And what happens when a cylinder is deactivated, engine oil pressure goes to a certain lifter and it deactivates it. And when that cylinder is reactivated, oil pressure is cut and the lifter is going to function as a normal lifter once again. All sounds good and dandy, but what happens is those oil galleries to those lifters are so small, and even the finest little bits of dirt, gunky oil, burnt oil, can clog those galleries, and it's going to get the lifter to stick closed or stick open. And once that happens, it's trouble, and you're going to eat your cam, you're going to ruin your lifter, and basically you need a new camshaft and most likely new lifters. That is what's happening. It's very similar to what's happening with the Ram trucks or the 5.7 HEMIs, and it has to all kind of do with that cylinder deactivation, unfortunately. Now, what's a little strange about this issue is it seems like these lifter issues are popping up much more often with the newer trucks. 2019, 2020, 2021, it seems like these lifter failures are happening a little bit more frequently than the older engines of the same generation, as well as happening with like extremely low mileage. So I don't know what the story is there, if there's maybe some quality control issues with GM's factory now, because technically this is the exact same engine that is in a 2014, 15, 16, 17 model year truck, but it just seems like there's a lot more people reporting these issues with the newer engines, which is a little strange. So I don't know the full story on that. If you guys want, I could probably make a separate video just specifically diving deep into the lifter issue and really kind of dig into the bottom of it and seeing what the heck's going on. But to me, guys, if I was going to be buying a 5.3 engine in a new Chevy, that would be the #1 issue that would concern me. It does seem like these issues are mainly stemming from bad oil. And if I were you guys and you had one of these trucks, I would highly, highly recommend that you guys run high quality oil and try and get the best filter you can, because if you can eliminate as much dirt and debris and bad oil to these lifters, you're going to be so much better off. And that is the other thing I think that Ram did poorly, is they set their oil change intervals extremely high, much higher than I would probably ever recommend anyone to do. And I think that also contributed to their lifter issues, because you just get old, burnt, gunky oil and it would just, clog up those galleries, and the rest is history. So if I were you guys, I would use high quality oil, high quality filters, and change your oil frequently. I would probably change my oil every 5,000 miles. Now, the second issue that directly affects the new trucks here is the direct injection issues. Now, there really isn't an issue with the system itself, but it's more of a consequence of having direct injection in your engine. Now, direct injection, basically what that means is the injector is injecting fuel directly into the combustion chamber, whereas the previous generation 5.3s, the first and second, all had port injection. First thing is carboning up of your valves and intake manifolds. So with port injection, those valves and intake manifolds are always being sprayed with relatively high pressure fuel, and it just naturally cleans them. It takes the carbon deposits away. With direct injection, you don't get that. So you are going to end up with much more carbon deposits on your intake manifold as well as your valves. And that can lead to a number of issues. Obviously performance is #1, less airflow, less performance. Eventually it can even lead to misfires or rough idling. So if you guys are experiencing any of that, it would be a good idea to get that checked out. It's a pretty common issue with any direct injection engine. It's not just specific to GM. Now, the second issue with direct injection in these 5.3s is you're going to experience more likelihood of injector failures. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this a common problem, but it does seem like injectors are failing at a much higher rate than they were in the previous generation of engine, which was not direct injection. And it probably makes sense because the injector is literally inside the combustion chamber. It's going to get a lot more heat, a lot more pressure, and probably a lot more likelihood of failing. So now you're probably wondering why the heck GM went to direct injection. Well, guys, we got to remember, I am just talking about the issues. Direct injection engines are a wonderful thing. They're much more efficient. They're going to produce a lot more power. They are generally a very good system. The pros are going to greatly outweigh the negatives in almost every case. So just keep that in mind. I am just talking about the issues, but sometimes new technology also comes with new consequences, and I just figured you guys should be aware of some side effects of having direct injection. So those would be the major issues that would concern me if I was going to be looking at buying a brand new GMC or Chevy truck with the 5.3, or I guess any GM or Chevy truck that is older than, let's say, 2014. Those would be the things I would look out for. But there are a number of issues with the older generations of 5.3s, which we'll get into. So the second generation of 5.3 engine, roughly between 2007 and 2013, those engines had a major issue, and that was oil consumption. So the root of the cause was, once again, the active fuel management system, or the cylinder deactivation system. Basically, what was happening is that the cylinder deactivation system was letting valve train oil go through the PCV and into the intake, and the engine was burning the oil. Also, the piston rings were also letting oil come up from the crankcase into the combustion chamber. So a number of issues that all led to a lot of oil consumption, and in a lot of cases, people just run these engines dry without even knowing. So that's unfortunate, because once your engine runs out of oil, it's pretty much cooked. There's no going back. You're gonna need a new engine. So there's actually a class action lawsuit still pending against GM for the years specifically 2010 to 2014 for high oil consumption. So if you guys have trucks of those years or engines of those years, I would be checking your oil at least weekly, preferably like daily. There's nothing really inherently wrong with an engine consuming oil. It's not going to be catastrophic by any means, but what will be catastrophic is if the engine runs out of oil. Now, the other major issue with the second generation of 5.3 stems directly from the oil consumption issue, is that the spark plugs would often get fouled prematurely, and you'd have to replace your spark plugs because, well, they're full of oil. No surprise there. But yeah, it's kind of funny how the cylinder deactivation has kind of wreaked havoc on these 5.3s, because in my opinion, I think the most reliable 5.3s are actually the first generation that doesn't have any cylinder deactivation technology in it. It's a much more simpler engine, and it just seems to have less issues. So finally, guys, is the first generation of 5.3 from 1999 to about 2007, depending on what make and model you get. In my opinion, and in the opinions of others, just reading through the forums, it seems like people with the first generation of 5.3 tend to be the happiest with their engine. It seems like those people get great longevity and durability out of it. Not the biggest or most powerful producing engine, but when you buy a pickup truck, usually what you're looking for is strength, dependability, and longevity. So the first generation of 5.3 seems to meet that criteria quite well. There are issues with it. Sometimes what would happen is the heads on those 5.3s would crack, and you'd have an internal coolant seepage into the combustion chamber. So if you guys are losing coolant, odds are you're gonna have a cracked head somewhere. And the second issue with those engines is the intake manifold gaskets would often fail. Now it seems to me that the intake manifold gaskets that are failing are those engines that have been running for a long time. The intake manifold on these 5.3s is plastic. So, you got to think about all those hot, cold cycles that this engine goes through probably on a daily basis. Over the years, that plastic probably slightly warps a little bit, and that's probably what's honestly causing the intake manifold to fail. So guys, those are the major issues with the 5.3 V8s in these Chevy GM pickup trucks. My biggest concern, like I mentioned, would be the lifter failures. I don't know exactly what's going on, why the newer trucks are having more lifter failures than the older ones with technically the exact same engine. But you know, with the price of pickup trucks these days, it just seems ridiculous that you're going to have a lifter failure at very low mileage. Some of these guys are complaining of lifter failures below 10,000 miles. Obviously, it's going to be covered by warranty, but I mean, good luck getting parts these days. Who knows how long it's going to be? Who knows how long a truck's going to be sitting? Could be months, right? So just not what you want. So that would be my biggest concern there. Now, obviously, I'd love to hear from you guys, what you guys think about this. And before everyone jumps on top of me, there are a lot of great things about the 5.3, but this video is just about the issues. It says something when an engine's been around for over 20 years that there's probably a good formula there. The fact that this engine's been around since 1999 and they are still producing brand new trucks with this engine should tell you that there is some good relative reliability, longevity, and durability in these engines. And I mean, GM has had the reputation for decades of making really, really good V8s. Anyways, guys, hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. We got lots of cool stuff planned. If you guys want me to review any specific engine, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can make that work. Anyways, enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video.